Welcome to Turn Extension, a supplemental podcast for the Advanced Maneuvers YouTube channel.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Turn Extension. My name is Tony, or Polar Bear Cub on the forums.
Hey everybody, it's Kevin.
Hey everybody, it's Cutthroat Cure, Devin Marr in real life.
Alright guys, so today we've got two topics. One question was asked to us about 2 weeks ago, and it was about just a conversation we had earlier about the cheating. And then afterwards we are going to talk about Nova Open, which we are fresh out of. Mostly Devin is fresh out of. I kind of dipped my toe in it for a couple hours on Saturday. But yeah, Devin, you got the question for us?
Yeah, so we were asked after our episode where we talked about cheating, James Spires had a comment and asked us another question that we decided instead of trying to answer over text, we decided to try and dedicate maybe the first few minutes of this cast on it. So James's question is, how do you recommend dealing with misplaying rules during casual games? For instance, on the table next to you at a game night, you hear a rule that is explained incorrectly or is played completely wrong. Do you think you should correct that person during their game, tell them afterwards, or something else?
Go ahead, Tony.
So for me, it depends on the situation. If it's if I'm playing with a group of friends and I hear the rule being played, for me personally, I will say something right then and there. If it's someone I don't know, I tend to be a little bit more shy about that. So I usually just wait until if there's a way for me to interact during that. Like if I'm playing at a table next to them, I probably wouldn't have any reasons to be, hey, oh, I heard that. But if I'm looking at the table and I hear it, then I feel more comfortable being like, actually, that's not how that rule is played. Other than that, I tend to just wait till the person I'm playing against, that person, like correct them.
So I think the key word for me during this question is the fact that he said casual play. So I know in a tournament stance, there's a lot of like nuances you have to follow, and going and talking to the organizer to get somebody to go over and kind of talk to them. But I believe that if I actively am sitting there and I hear that a rule is being played incorrectly, I actually do believe that it is actually my job as a longtime player. And if it's a rule that I actually do know the end result on, that I will go ahead and just look it up while I'm sitting there. And then once I find the confirmed answer that says that this rule is being played wrong, I will address the table, just say, hey guys, didn't really want to butt in too much, but I kind of overheard you all talking, and I wanted to let you know that this is how that rule works. Because because for me, waiting until the end of the game, like if it's like two people playing and stuff, like that moment, like maybe the way that rule is written could actually change the way the entire game is played. So then then these two people might be thinking, man, I just spent the last 2 hours of my time at a minimum on a game that didn't even matter due to a rule that I waited to tell them afterwards.
I was actually, when I read that comment, I actually kind of did a little bit of, I guess you could call it Warmachine and Hordes soul searching on this one, because I can honestly say that I've addressed this situation 5 different ways, 5 different times. I have been known to just blurt out, no, it's actually this. Just casually. I tend to only, like you, Tony, I tend to only do that kind of blurt out scenario when it's one of my friends. Mm-hmm. Because then it's a situation of, the biggest thing for me about the casual game question is how intrusive am I being? If it's two complete strangers sitting next to me and I turn around and go, no, actually it's this, then from their perspective it becomes a scenario of, who is this asshole telling us we're wrong?
Yeah.
So it becomes very intrusive for me to just jump into that situation. In those situations where it's somebody who I don't know, I tend to try and approach it from, are you sure about that? Like, I almost put the question in their mind, or at least in the player's mind, of, are you sure that's the way it's played? And then let them figure it out. hopefully one of the two of them will bite that and be like, I don't know, let's look it up or something like that. Because then it's not intrusive in the sense of I'm telling you you're wrong. It's more of an inquisitive, are you sure that's right? And hopefully one of the two of them picks it up and goes with that. That's another way that I've dealt with the casual situation, is just the asking the question, are you sure about that? Or, hey, could you show me in the rule book where that is? I'm curious about that, or something to that effect. The other thing, and Devin kind of really hit this one on the head, is that there have been times where I wanted to just blurt out and be like, no, it's this. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, I'm not sure I know that rule 100%, or not as confidently as I think I should in order to blurt out. Because one of the biggest things is you don't ever want to be in a situation where you tell somebody, hey, you're playing it wrong, and it's because you actually don't know the rule right. Because then you just lead them down a path of incorrectness. So it's a situation where
embarrassment.
Yeah. Lots of embarrassment because, hey, asshole, you ruined our game because we were doing it right. And in that situation, what ends up happening is, like Devin, I'll like jump into a war room and pull up the thing, or if I have the little rule book handily, I'll do it that way. But the problem in that situation is the amount of time that I've taken to look up the rule to make sure that I know what I'm doing. They have probably already moved on, and the game state has changed to a point where even if I do say, hey, that's not actually the way it's done, I just looked it up in the rule book or something like that, then it becomes a situation of, okay, that's cool, but we've already moved on. The game state's changed. We can't go back. And I think in that situation, it's more you look it up, you confirm what the rule is, and then you come to them at the end of the game. And I think that's where the end of the game scenario is you have to go to the end of the game. I've actually had a time where I don't wait till the end of the game or wait till the end of the round, which is one way I've done it before, whereas I let them go through the motions, I let them determine their course of action, and once they shift the clock over, then I'll jump in and be like, hey, just so you know, for following turns, this is actually how that interaction works, or this is a situation. That may screw the person at that time, but it really kind of, the biggest problem is, for me, is it's always that intrusive nature. I don't want to come off as this strange asshole who's telling them you're wrong and you're playing the game wrong, because what if I'm wrong? And two, I don't want to interrupt the game. They're just trying to have, if it's a casual game, most likely they're just trying to have fun. And if they're trying to have fun, does being 100% accurate with the rules really matter if they're enjoying their time?
I believe it does a little bit, just because I believe that there's a reason that the game was played, and especially if it's two people I don't know what their skill levels are. So being a PG, or an XPG, from my standpoint, every person that I go over and might mention, hey, this is going on, maybe they actually didn't, neither person knew how that rule worked, so it could be something as big as, you just changed, maybe the way they build lists, maybe they do this, depending on what rule it is. I've noticed times that, in my opinion, I think it's every player's responsibility to make sure that this game is being played the right way, especially with as many changes as we've gone through. And I think the biggest one is, especially with the new, quick erratas and stuff that we do, if we don't make sure that somebody's playing the rules the correct way, that's a good way, for people to start thinking that maybe somebody's cheating when maybe they're just unaware of the rules. Because while in a casual game you have that freedom to tell somebody and maybe save them a little bit of trouble, if they would go maybe the next day and play in a tournament and maybe you didn't tell them, or maybe it just didn't come up, or they didn't get that experience, or it didn't actually stick in their head, then you have a situation where now this person might lose their tournament and then get salty about the game because they didn't know something, So I don't
want to come across to say that the situation shouldn't go unanswered, but I don't necessarily think that it's a scenario of you should be jumping into, I don't think you should let somebody go off with the understanding of the rules being different than they actually are. But at the same time, I don't agree with you. I don't think it's my responsibility as a player to jump down their throat when they're doing it wrong. Point it out, yes, but if they're like, oh no, I can totally run and charge at the same turn, at what point do I turn around and go, no, you're fucking wrong, and that doesn't turn off to a bad scenario?
I definitely believe, like, as I said, I'm not saying you have to jump down, like, immediately as soon as you hear it, be like, pause the clocks, we need to get this figured out.
Pause the clocks, bitches!
Yeah. I definitely think that you made a good point about maybe sometimes waiting until the end of the round. But I definitely believe that as a player, and if it's just somebody who's been playing it forever and hasn't been doing this, as much, I always feel like, knowledge is key, especially in this game. And, sometimes making sure that somebody plays this game right. We are a community, and especially when it comes to casual play, I definitely believe that when you're in a casual scenario, that we as a community should, definitely look out for each other. And that includes when it comes down to rules, because we want to make sure that everybody's having a good game and and a good play experience, because, already with us having as much trouble as we have with keeping players into the game, the last thing we need is for people to get salty over something that could have been avoided.
So,
but I agree with you.
Let me flip this on you. I'm going to put you on the spot here.
Okay.
Two things. First one, so we're talking about casual right now, where you should be like, hey, I'm going to jump in and I'm going to say something. Does that apply at the tournament level too?
No.
If you're in a tournament, do you pause the clocks, asshole? You're doing it wrong. So why is that different? Because
in a tournament format, so here's the way I look at it, and I've actually confirmed this with some other judges and stuff just to make sure. So if you're an outside player, if you are not the TO, if you are not a judge, if you're not the judge, then you are interrupting a game state, and that's actually super big and super bad. If you are a TO or a judge and you see something is being misplayed, you are almost required to stop them and make sure that rule is being played right. So if you are an outside, observer, and let's say that you see, Tony running and charging in the same turn.
Which I do.
Physically, that is, with the same model, physically that's not able to happen. So therefore, that game state is an illegal game state. So as an observer, you should immediately go and get a judge. You should immediately go get the TO, whoever is available, and basically mention it to them. You should never touch the models that are on the table. You should never touch the clock or anything like that, because that will definitely result in disqualifications and other issues, or you being asked to leave the event. But definitely, even as an observer, if you see this stuff happening and you recognize that it's happening. So it's definitely, if you're an observer for an event, you should definitely make sure that the game overall is being played in the right manner. And so you should go find a judge, you should go find a TO, and you should make it aware that, currently there's a, illegal play state, and the TO is going to absolutely do everything they can to get that game back to square one to make sure that it is being played properly. Now, the reason why it's different from a tournament to a casual standpoint is, in a casual standpoint, you are trying to play the game. And you are obviously, whether you're new, you're old, no matter what, you're trying to play the game, and it's more relaxed. When you walk up to that steamroller and you turn in those lists, you are basically, and you pay your entry fee, you are entering in basically an unspoken but spoken agreement that you have agreed that you are good enough to play in a competitive fashion, and therefore should be able to perform and compete at a competitive level. And that is where it becomes different, because
we're going to disagree here, because that statement reeks of arrogance.
Yeah, I have never once agreed that I am good enough to be in a competitive format.
Anybody can go to a steamroller tournament, whether they're competitive or not. They may have to accept the fact of, you're not that competitive, you're going to end up in the bottom bracket. But I don't think that there's ever been a need for a requirement of you have to be so good to participate in a steamroller.
I'm not saying there's a requirement. I'm saying that when you enter into a steamroller or any sort of tournament thing, you are basically saying that you feel that you are competitive enough to perform in a competitive format, because nobody is going to sit there and explain to you every, like in a formal game, you can sit there and go, okay, hey, I need this, or hey, I need that, or do you mind if I go back, or do you mind if I do this? And yeah, they might allow it in a steamroller game, but it's more happenstance than it is in a casual game. Like people are more understanding of mistakes when you're playing a casual game than when you're playing in a, at a competitive tournament level.
But the way that you've described it to me, of if in a casual game, then yeah, it's okay. Go ahead and, for better lack of terms, interrupt the game to make sure that the rules are playing right. If it's a tournament game, then you can't do that. Your only option is to go find a TO, and hopefully they can respond back and fix it up. So it sounds like the only reason that you don't engage in a tournament is because you as a player would suffer punitive action for interfering in a game.
Not to mention in a casual game, most of the time you don't have an official that's over everything.
Well, we don't have an official anywhere, and now.
Well, that's what I'm saying. But I mean, if you were playing in your weekend Wednesday game, then there's nobody there that's going to be that person that is in all respects over this stuff. And I mean,
isn't that the EO though?
At a tournament, it is, but not on a casual.
Yeah, I see what you said. Casual night. Okay.
Yeah, casual nights, you're not going to have that. So that is why that rule is there, is because of the fact of, there's somebody whose entire job for that day is to handle this situation, and obviously they're either trained in this or feel comfortable enough that they feel that they can handle this, because when you're playing in a competitive format like that, unlike when you're playing on your casual Wednesdays, there could be a lot more at stake. You're talking prize support. You're talking you've actually paid money. Like, as I said, I don't know what everybody's casual night is like, but for the most part, when you're dealing with a situation like this, that's why there's such a big difference.
Okay, I'll concede that to your point that the tournament format and the casual format have a difference of state to it that require your response to be changed. I want to then flip it over to my second putting you on the spot, which is you made mention that as a community, it's our responsibility to make sure that the game is played properly. I'll use the word properly. At what point does our responsibility as a community to make sure the game properly supersedes people having fun playing the game? So as an example, you get a player who's playing Trolls versus Convergence, and the Troll player's like, Trolls are awesome because they can just dump their fury when they eat somebody. Now you as a Troll player know that's fucking wrong. But if both players are like laughing when the Mauler picks up the Bane and throws him in his mouth and removes the Fury and just goes on this Pac-Man spree, and both players are laughing about it and having fun, when does our responsibilities supersede their enjoyment?
Exactly right then and there, because while they are enjoying themselves, and people are more than welcome to make their own house rules. Like if you went over and you said, hey, they can't do this, and they said, oh no, we're just playing a house rule, then you go, oh, okay, carry on. But the simple fact is that while that individual might be having fun at that exact moment, eating Banes and removing Fury, the moment that they feel like they're comfortable or they play into a player who is very knowledgeable about this game, think of how silly they're going to feel as this person, they've been playing it forever and ever like this, or maybe they decided to play it against, a really good player, or maybe they decided, they went to a convention or a tournament, and now's their chance to play Jacob Van Meter, and they feel like their list is super competitive. And they go up and they play that game versus this very competitive player who, is very top tier, and then they make a fool out of themselves because of because while they may have been having fun at one point, and, the game overall, they weren't having fun legally. And that's what
do you do in a situation where you're like, hey, you can't do that, by the way, that's, Trolls don't do that, or whatever the justification that you give or the explanation that you give. And I'm talking heat of the moment here, because I recognize that by not if you stop their game right then and there and you tell them, hey, trolls can't do that. You know, it would be cool if they could, but they can't. And then the troll player is like, oh, really? That sucks. Well,
You should definitely
I
read the
guess we'll
situation.
just keep playing this game now. And then they continue playing the game and they're no longer having fun, as opposed to if you had waited till the end of the game, they could have finished their enjoyment and then you could have put them on the right path.
Yeah, but just
But
because it was their enjoyment, what about their opponent? If their opponent might not be having fun, they're like, okay, cool. I'm more excited now playing the game because now I realize that bullshit interaction is not real. So
Well,
is it okay
yeah.
to sacrifice one person's enjoyment for the other person's enjoyment?
No, in this example, I was basically illustrating that both players were enjoying themselves having that fun. I agree that if one player is getting flustered and frustrated and you know it's a result of a wrong rule, then in that situation, you're almost interceding on that player's behalf because they don't know. But I'm looking at it from the situation of if you have two players, because the original question was if it's not your game, it's a different game that you're sitting next to. So you're not necessarily directly involved with that game. If they're having fun, when does right play supersede fun?
Well, I mean, in what you're saying, Kevin, I will now concede that I definitely believe that it definitely will depend on the situation. So if you're sitting there and it's the end of their game, or maybe they're a good way through the game and they're just laughing their asses off and they're having a good old fucking time playing the game incorrectly, then then maybe I believe like you can wait till the end, read the room, read the situation, and then say, hey guys, I would have said something earlier because you guys, because I noticed this, but you guys just seemed like you guys were having so much fun. I just figured I wanted to see how it played out, and I just wanted to let you know that trolls cannot eat Bane Knights and just remove all fury. And then they'd be like, oh well, hopefully they'd be like, thanks for letting me know and stuff. Or even if they were like, it sucks. The thing is that you just did a service because while those two might have been having a really good game and might have been having a ton of fun, like this person, the person that's playing the trolls, every game that they get makes them more and more and I'm doing the quotations right now, an experienced player. So therefore, if they play somebody who's an inexperienced player and they start doing that, then you're creating an issue because maybe that person's not going to understand it, or maybe that you're just basically pushing negative alternate fact.
I refuse to believe that, Devin. I fully believe you will shit on somebody's enjoyment.
Yeah, and I guess this is kind of going into the macro versus micro. Macro level, we obviously need to make sure that the game's played properly because we don't want to allow a situation that theoretically we could fix by putting them on the right, these are the right ways to play the rules for future games. But at the micro level, I guess it's like you were saying, Devin, you really have to judge the situation. When you're in that casual scenario and a rules issue is playing wrong or cheating is happening, actually, we didn't even touch on that one, but if rules are playing wrong, then I think it's at a micro level when you're dealing with just that one game, you need to read the two players and see how involved you should be getting. If they're having fun, back the fuck off. It's not your responsibility. Or it's not your right to interrupt their fun.
Not at that second, not at that minute.
At the end of the game,
definitely
put them on
time
the
to make it clear.
Yeah, at the end of the game or the end of the turn or whatever, then you can approach it from the more macro level of, hey, I want to make sure this doesn't happen to you in the future. But in that moment, I think you need to back off. However, one of the things that when we were just talking about cheating in the prior cast, the 2 episodes ago, was actual cheating, like intentional cheating. And in my opinion, and this is my opinion here, I don't know about my co-hosts, in my opinion, if you see somebody legitimately cheating, cupping dice, moving models when players aren't being called or something like that, that shit needs to be called out immediately.
Like that very fucking second. Now, preface this is only in competitive play, because once again, I mean, not non-competitive play, casual play. You should only call this shit out right then and there on casual play. If it is in a competitive format such as a steamroller or any sort of tournament, you do once again need to go find the TO or the judge.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, on a casual though, like if you see some guy, you know, you're playing at the shop and you see some guy who, like, when the guy turned around to talk to his girlfriend, he turns around and licks his thumb and wipes off an entire column of damage, that shit needs to be called out. And that's for the health of the community more than anything else. That's dude, you just wiped an entire column of damage. That's cheating.
But hey, man, both of them were having fun.
Yeah, they were having fun because the other guy didn't know what just happened. Now, if you turn around and go, oh, there's entire damage, you go, dude, that's cheating. You can't wipe an entire damage when the other guy looking, and the other guy turns around and goes, that's fine, I'm still kicking his ass. Then, you know, hey, sure, you go do your thing. But you made it very clear. And I think that's, I am not quiet. If I see somebody cheating, I will publicly call your ass out. And if nothing more than you're not going to get away with it, and the rest of the community knows you're a fucking cheater.
100%. And we can agree on that.
Yep, I agree.
Wait, did we just fucking agree? I want to go into this debate a little further. I've changed my position merely to argue with Devin.
You're like, how can I switch this where we don't agree?
So I think when it comes to the cheating and the casual, there's a lot of factors that come into it, and you really have to judge it. But I think we kind of hit the high points on that one.
So hopefully, James, we answered your question. Let us know when this goes up in the comments if you feel like you got the answer, the answer you're hoping for. And if not, then, maybe ask us again, and we'll see if we can get it right next time.
Or ask us a different question.
Correct. And that goes for anybody. I mean, if you ever have a question for us, if we don't answer it in the comments, which we do watch, if we don't get a chance to answer it in the comments, it doesn't mean that we're not reading it. It doesn't mean that we're not looking to answer it. It just means that we might be planning to use that question for a future episode.
Okay.
So let's get back into the second part of our conversation for today. And let's talk about the fact that Nova Open was this very last weekend. It is over, and maybe a little bit, because I know both of you actually attended. Maybe not the whole thing, but you guys both were able to make it.
At least on Friday.
Did you hear that, Tony? Did you hear that deep sigh? Nova Open is over.
Nova Open is done. Now planning starts last Wednesday already for next year's.
What are you talking Wednesday? What are you fucking talking about? You mean fucking Day night?
I was going to say, he was getting into the parking garage, getting into his car, and he's like, okay, next year we need to...
Next year's going to be better. We're going to have strippers and blackjack.
I'll fucking count me there.
You heard it, guys. Nova 2018, strippers and blackjack.
Not a true statement.
That is definitely a true statement. It's on the internet, Kevin. That means it's true.
No.
Kevin, anything on the internet is true.
So it was awesome. It was such a super fun, successful event. I have to say that this was by far, in my opinion, our best year. We had a lot more work to do this year than we have in past years, just because of the absence of the PG force. Because usually we have a lot of help from PGs in the area. Sadly, we did not have that option this year. We did have a lot of ex-PGs, as well as just friends of the convention, friends in general, just come and help us. I definitely wanted to take a hot moment and just kind of send out a quick thank you to the people that, I want to recognize that helped us with that. First and foremost is, I'm going to butcher it, I know it, but Zosha Simpson. Good. She killed it. She was there helping us the entire time. I honestly don't believe that the event without her help would have run as smoothly. She was literally my guardian angel on Saturday. We quickly became best friends, and she helped us run that event so smoothly. I also want to thank Sheridan Plunkett, or Solus. He came even though he doesn't really play the game currently, and he helped us with everything, made sure things ran smoothly, helped me with paperwork. I want to thank Paul Johans for helping me set up tables, for being there when I needed to move stuff. He, bringing terrain and objectives so that we were able to run all of the scenarios, not to mention clocks. That was super helpful. I want to thank Brendan, who was one of our co-leads, for being super helpful and setting up the Iron Arena, and anyone else I might have missed, but those people, at the top of the list were there no matter what, helping us out regardless of what was going on. And of course, a major thanks to John LeClaire, my co-lead, in just being, definitely the yin to my yang and helping me knock this year out together. So that was super helpful. So now that I have that out, talk about a few of the really good points. So we had Privateer Press this year at Nova Open. They didn't bring a booth or a stand or anything, but we did have JR and Oz come out. What the fuck was that?
Sorry. I smacked some glasses together.
Tony's been drinking again.
It sounded like he was like getting his anvil out and starting blacksmithing during the cast.
Don't mind me. Just gonna build a plate mail soon.
Yeah, dude. Get my ironclad built.
Guys. I got to get this heavy sword done by.
I figured for Nova Open 2018 we can have an ironclad, right?
You're gonna cosplay as an ironclad.
Yeah, Lock and Load should be the only one that has a big blue.
Exactly. But otherwise, like, all of the events went smoothly. We had a grand time. Our Masters was a little bit rocky just because we had some scheduling issues, but otherwise, our Masters Championship was taken by none other than Jacob Van Meter in a sweet, sweet battle between him and Tim Banky, which was really cool. And that was a really good game to watch. I believe both players played really well. Just JVM was able to get in there and take some, heavy casualties from, take out a lot of... Banky took a lot of casualties from Jacob, and I wasn't sure if he was going to be able to bring it back, which ended up crowning Jacob as our Nova 2017 Champions Master, which was awesome. Second place was, of course, Tim Banky. Third place being Michael Ireland. So all three of them played really hard games nonstop. It was really cool. We ran our first Champions ever, which I must say, as being a previous hardcore winner for painting and participant, I think the Champions run so much better.
Really?
Yeah, it was awesome, dude. Like, I think one of the biggest changes, so the two biggest changes to the format I noticed, well, three biggest is Champions only allows you to use casters that are in ADR. Okay. So it definitely, sometimes you saw casters you weren't expecting, or it caused people who might play one faction to actually switch to another faction just because maybe they weren't getting the setup they wanted. It also kind of changed it up because you didn't see nothing but power lists. Like, you would see some lists that were a little bit different because they only have 4 casters to choose from, and they had to kind of fit what they were looking for out of their 2-list pairing. So that was kind of cool. The second biggest thing I noticed was the fact of not having 7-minute turns, like in Hardcore did, was, seemed like it was much easier for them as players. So, the games were much smoother. People were able to get what they wanted to get done. And I never really felt like games came down to the fact of, crap, I forgot all of this stuff, which happened a lot in Hardcore unless you specifically trained for it. And the third biggest change, and I have to say that I definitely believe that this was a really positive change, and it changes the way that people were actually playing, is the fact that there is no more, I think it's called Executioner, I think it was called, the person that basically kills the fewest amount of models.
Mage Hunter.
A Mage Hunter, that's it. Yeah, Executioner is the one where you kill the most points. So they got rid of Mage Hunter. Mage Hunter no longer exists in this format. Now it is called Conqueror. So it's the person that scores the most control points, since there is a scenario. So that was super cool. And I can remember. I remember that. Oh, I do remember the whole people. So Matt Rotunda won Champions overall. He was undefeated up until the end. Our own Anthony Gibbs took most kill points killed, so I think that one was called Slayer.
I didn't even know Gibbs was there.
Yeah, Gibbs was there, and he actually took Slayer. He killed the most army points out of anybody in the event.
He was standing
So-
on a body pile.
That is
Yeah,
amazing.
Michael Stone took Conqueror, which is the most control points, and it was crazy. He was like taking control, so many control points. It was such a high number. It was pretty bonkers when I looked over that. And then Jimmy Livingston, our very own Jimmy Livingston, who I think plays out of games and stuff, he actually took the best painted army. We had seven armies that made it to the final cut. And then there was about a 10 to 15 minute judging process between myself and two other Capital Palette judges. And in the very end, Jimmy Livingston actually took first place with his mercenary army. So congrats to all of them.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So as
And
I
I
was saying about... Go ahead.
I think you can actually see pictures of that Merc army list on Nova's Twitter account.
Yes, that is true. We specifically asked for a photographer to put that up. It was sweet. It was a really cool army. Jimmy put a lot of time and effort into it. And judging between our top four in that list, in that format, was really, really hard because there was this amazingly beautiful Grimkin army by Cody Hyatt that was super, super sweet and had a lot of cool conversions. There was this, I don't remember his name, which I feel really bad about, but he had a Ret army, and I'm kidding you guys not. His entire Ret army was based on actual marble.
Really?
There's one way to deal with model tilt.
He had actual cylinders, marble cylinders, base inserts that he had put in, and all of his Ret, which were done in this galaxy scheme, which hopefully there's pictures of that too. And all of them were on this black and gray and white marble.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that was really cool to see. Justin Cronin entered his sweet Ret army, so his army was really, really well done and had some beautiful basing. And then we also had, I think his name was Scott Frank, and he had a beautiful troll army. And then we also had Paul Johans entered his Signar, and his Signar were very well done. Then we also had another Grimkin army. I don't remember that gentleman's name. It's Cirillo, something Cirillo.
Did Isotope enter the Sunset Retribution?
Isotope.
CJ?
He could not. He was not allowed to.
Why not?
Because he didn't paint it.
No. Well, that's rough.
I didn't know if it was if you weren't allowed to do. I didn't know that was a thing you couldn't put.
No, I mean the fact of it is, most of the time, I'll be honest, and a lot of people in this game are very honest. At least, is most of the time when you put people in, they'll tell you hey man, I've got to turn this down because I didn't actually paint this,
Mm-hmm.
And sadly, and for me, if you're going to win a painting competition, then it's definitely based on your skill, not on your wallet.
No, it's totally based on my wallet. It's the only way I win.
Yep, for realsies.
That's where it came out for CJ, and he knew that going into it, which I informed him of. So
that's cool. I was just curious because that army is we really should get an army showcase of that one time because that army is fucking beautiful, and our drive-bys don't do it justice.
He's got that, and he's got his he actually was playing his mercenaries, which were painted by Jolly Roger Studios. He is playing them for Champions, and they're also super sexy. So, but yeah, having Privateer Press there was really good. A lot of people, oh my gosh, so many people were grabbing games of Company of Iron.
I know. I was so mad I didn't get to play. I wanted to, and I got sidetracked.
Every time I walked by both demo tables of it, they even had one point in time had 3 running of it, and every time I walked by, there was always somebody getting a demo. I'm like, God damn it! I've got a very limited time window I can be here. Somebody get up from the damn table.
Yeah, so that was really cool to see that, and I really enjoyed that. Otherwise, the game the prize support was pretty sweet. Thank you to Muse and Broken Egg Games and Privateer Press and everybody else who provided support for that, which was really cool. Everybody seemed to leave, OKR, everybody seemed to leave pretty happy. And, all in all, it was a really, really good convention. We had the most amount, I don't have the final numbers, but we had the most amount of players that we've had. I know that our champions had I think, 50 people in it.
Well, also, you guys, this was the year that you guys weren't in the Grand Hall, which initially I was like, oh, man, you're not in the Grand Hall anymore. But actually, when I got there, I was like, okay, this kind of makes sense because in the Grand Hall, it's not just Warmachine and Hordes. It's like Warmachine and Hordes and Malifaux and like 5 other different games, and people are screaming over each other and God knows what. Whereas when you guys were put into your own hall, there's like a devoted Warmachine and Hordes hall now where it's just Warmachine and Horde shit happening. And that was actually pretty legit.
Yeah, a lot of people, I'll be honest with you, a lot of people when they heard that we were removed from the Grand Hall were kind of, from the Great Hall, they were kind of worried that we had basically been banished. Like that was, I definitely will say that was a growing trend. Like everybody was like, oh, you know.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, I mean, it's the sad fact. And the simple fact of it is that we weren't. We actually, you know, we're really happy with where we were put. And, you know, we got along really well with the Dark Age and, you know, the Cool Mini or Not people. So, you know, it was really cool. And the room was super sweet. We had more room than we've ever had in the past. We had more control over, like, where we can move around and if we wanted to do something. All of the Cool Mini or Not, the people running the Cool Mini or Not games, they were super easy to work with. All in all, it was just such a sweet, and we actually had more tables this year than we've ever had. We had 50 tables, plus a few round tables, which we were able to use, where in previous years we had around like 40 some, or, you know, sometimes maybe a few less. And so it was good. And it was kind of cool because while a lot of people weren't able to just stumble in there because there was a ton of other games going on, the fact is that, you know, we had plenty of people pop in, and our room was just so large that, you know, we never had any, you know, army spills. People had more than enough room to set their armies. We had, this year, we had kind of taken a little bit of an initiative and grabbed some extra tables and stacked them up at the back of the room so that during the tournaments of the day, people had a place to put their bags. And that was something that was non-existent the year before, because people were having to stack their bags in doorways last year, and that can cause issues such as, you know, just, you know, models getting destroyed or bags getting taken, and that's just something we didn't want this year. So I was really happy with how that turned out.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was really shocked at first that that you guys got the smaller room, but no, I mean, you made a good point where it was actually a lot better, and it was awesome.
And not to mention the lighting was really good.
The lighting was really good.
I don't necessarily think it was smaller so much. It was because if you were to take the Grand Hall and then just carve out the space that Warmachine and Horde was given over the years, I think it's actually the same amount of space, if not a little more, in the new one.
It's actually the old room where we were at was smaller because what a lot of people didn't take into consideration, which we had this year, is that we have had to build our prize table within doorways or have so little room that we could move, where this year we had a full spread with 2 full tables, which was, you know, made it super easy for people. We had an area where people could actually set up and come and talk to us. We had, I mean, most of the times when we're playing, we only had room for the tables to play for tournaments and maybe a few Iron Arena games. We had 2 rows for Iron Arena games, not to mention an entire row dedicated to Company of Iron's demos. So it was very, what's the word I'm looking for? It was very misleading, but the new room this year was actually much larger, and I can only hope that next year we get the same room.
That is awesome. All right. Well, that being said, guys, I want to thank everyone for listening to another episode of Turn Extension. Have a good one.
Good night.
See you, everybody.